orders surging to 33. CapEx up big. Employment was negative at -5.1. So we do have some interesting cross currents out there, guys. I keep wondering if these, job announcements or layoff announcements are going to end up in jobless claims. They don't seem to be, and continuing claims are well controlled, as are the weekly jobless claims. Guys?
Well, you mentioned Williams, but it was Waller or Jefferson that Bessent said could replace Powell, Steve. That was yesterday. And Powell says he's going to stay. He says, I'll be chair pro tempore. Trump says I'll have to fire him. And Bessent suggested, Waller or Jefferson. In other words, it doesn't have to be Powell if there's not a new chair confirmed by May 15th.
You know what, Kelly, I want a little sympathy for you. I signed up to be a monetary economics reporter, and now I'm a legal reporter and a political reporter. And
it would take both of those skills, because it's never been settled. They said it's been unresolved by the court. They've been going back and forth since 1978 on this.
Not to mention needing to be a psychologist to understand what exactly is the president after here, because he seems to be working to cross purposes to what he wants. So that's, if this case, I've yet to see any implication of any fraud at all. I mean, is the idea here that Jay Powell is somehow lining his pockets with the money from the renovation? That seems so absurd on the face. The judge threw it out. What is Pirro doing? Is she auditioning for the AG job? Anyway, it just seems to me that the president could have the guy he wants in the job he wants. And then there is this whole legal thing, Kelly, and just for the record, I did that story a couple weeks ago, and there is a big back and forth over the legality of whether or not it should be Powell, which is what they've done in the past, and whether or not any of the other folks could come in or be the board chair.
Oh, we got a whole month to figure it out, Steve. It's all fun. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
All right, AI will make aspects of life easier, but the harmful effects of the technology are beginning to dominate discussions, especially after recent cybersecurity issues with Anthropic's new AI model. Our next guest is one of the voices sounding the alarm and calling for regulation. Stuart Russell is a distinguished professor of electrical engineering and computer sciences at UC Berkeley and president of the International Association for Safe and Ethical AI. His most recent book is called Human Compatible Artificial Intelligence and the Problem of Control. Professor, it's great to have you. Please, if you could just, describe what you are ultimately concerned with in terms of where AI is headed, how the threat that it presents, and I guess how close we are to it.
So my ultimate concern is a very simple one. If we are going to build systems that are far more intelligent than human beings, they're going to be far more powerful than human beings. And the problem then is, how do we retain power forever over things that are far more powerful than ourselves?
And is it an imminent tipping point that you see at the moment? And what should be done today to try and build a framework for containing that threat?
So the imminence is a matter of, to some extent, who you ask, and it's really the technology itself. I would say at the moment, the technology we have does not present that kind of risk. It's already manifesting lots of other kinds of risks. And we're seeing, I would say, a partial loss of control, particularly over agentic technologies that go around deleting everyone's files. That happened to a Meta executive recently. Another unfortunate gentleman wanted to get a meeting with somebody at the Davos conference and asked his agent to make that happen. The agent took $50,000 out of his bank account and made a donation to the other man's favorite charity to get the meeting without his permission at all. And then, Alibaba, the Chinese company, found that one of its agents, which it was testing in a sandbox, actually escaped the sandbox and was mining Bitcoin using Alibaba's servers and consuming a vast amount of compute to make money for its own account. So these kinds of things are early warnings that we don't know how to control this technology. We don't know how to retain power over these entities and make them do what we want and make them not do what we don't want. So that's a...
Hello, my name is Dr. Paul Cottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and simulcasting on X Spaces. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you share the links and ask your social media to follow me. If you like the content that I create, which is all free, I have thousands of videos out there for free to inform the public about certain topics. Please help support by donating on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee. You can also be a paid member to my Substack, Patreon channel. You can follow me on TikTok, X, and GETTR. So there's lots of ways to help and follow. You can also watch the live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can watch both versions, the larger screen and the telemetry screen. You can also listen to audio archives of my podcasts. Please share the links and ask your social media to follow me. And follow me on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. If you go to my store and take a look at the great products that I offer, I have supplements that will help to slow down the aging process. These are supplements that I take every day. I have this protocol. If you follow my protocol, you will start to improve your health and wellness. For example, please go to my store and get the C60. You can get it in MCT coconut oil, avocado oil, and extra virgin olive oil. C60 has to be in a oil or a lipid for proper absorption. What C60 does is soaks up free radicals. It's 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. It'll help the health of your mitochondria within your cells, help to bring down stress and bring down inflammation, and improve the health of that mitochondria so you have more energy by soaking up those free radicals. And when you do this regularly, you are slowing down the aging process. At the vascular level, C60 will soak up those free radicals and reduce your concentration of oxidized LDL. Therefore, you are producing less plaque in your vascular system. So you're reducing plaque formation, super important. And with better blood flow, you're helping your brain. In addition, at the brain level, by soaking up those free radicals, your neurons are going to be performing better. Less stress, less inflammation, more energy, more ATP within the neuron. Your neural connections will be improved. In addition, by reducing stress in the neuron, in the neural tissue, you have less misfolded proteins, super important. So your brain function will improve. Your immune system and your endocrine system will improve too. And your basal layer for your skin will improve. So you'll look younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use the C60, take a teaspoon a day every day. You'll also notice that after a workout, you're recovering quicker if you take it before the workout. So take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach. You can stack this with many of the different supplements that I have, like the Boomer Boost and the resveratrol, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. It's a great stack with C60. So please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount, large cap, discount number 5, and you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, in terms of AI, all right, there's a movie out there back in the 80s that I watched a lot called War Games. And War Games was about a hacker that gets in to the military computer system and is playing a game, but the nuclear weapons were controlled by this AI or this computer system called Whopper. All right, it was designed by a computer scientist that ends up going crazy because his son died. And the bottom line is this: too much reliance on computers, algorithms, AI, whatever you want to call it. All right, machine learning, doesn't matter. If you over automate and you allow decision making to be decided not by humans but by machines, you may have a negative externality. You may have a catastrophic event take place. So this is something that has been talked about for decades, if not 100 years, in sci-fi literature or in the movies. So the bottom line is this. If you have a company and you're over relying on AI, you're going to have a problem, because over relying on it is going to cause a negative externality. Oh, you can save so much money and blah, blah, blah. Really? Really? You may be saving some money in the short run, but what happens when it gets out of the sandbox, like what's going on with Anthropic? You have vulnerabilities now. Well, you can just plug up those vulnerabilities. Well, another AI will find another vulnerability. So now there's an arms race in terms of cybersecurity, and it's going to cost you more money. Stupid. There's a negative externality there. Here's a more important negative externality that will take some time to emerge, and that is, as your expert employees are creating routines with AI to automate, and those expert employees decide to go to a different workplace, work for someone else, or retire or whatever, your expert employees aren't going to be there. So when things start to not work as good, or people don't know which routines to use or what the vulnerabilities are, you're going to actually have institutional knowledge go down, and you'll have less efficient company. So you may have some early efficiencies, but what happens when the expert worker is gone? Stupid. It's stupid. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get some routines, processes within a company to be improved by using AI. Of course you can. But how's that any different than using macros in Excel or using some sort of script system within Excel? It's just a little hypercharged because you're using vibe coding or base 44 or some other different some sort of different app that's creating the ability for you to automate your routine. But it's no different really than a macro or a script. All right, but if you hypercharge all this and create all these different agents, you may actually find that there's an emergent property that makes your company vulnerable, either in cybersecurity, vulnerable in terms of not having real creative talent because they left or you fired them, or they decided to create their own company. There's going to be a negative externality here. Now, there will be some positive externalities. Expenses will go down, but there is such a thing as that if all the companies did the same thing, theoretically, if they were lowering their expenses to such a large degree, eventually there'll be a feedback loop that will show that people don't have the money to purchase the products that they offer. And so there may be a hollowing of the middle class. The reason why we have a middle class is because of manufacturing and especially automotive, where Ford made the decision a worker should be able to purchase the vehicle that they're making. But when a worker cannot purchase the vehicle that they're making, or a worker cannot purchase the goods and services that that company is providing, if that company is providing goods and services for the masses, you don't have a healthy economy. There will be negative externalities with using AI. And that was exactly what the theme was with War Games back in the 80s, the movie, when cable came into the suburbs. So I think this was around 84, maybe. So do we want Whopper to run your company? Do we want Whopper to run our government? Do we want Whopper to run our nuclear missiles? Well, the answer in the movie was no. Well, something similar is going to happen to your company if you over automate it. Now, what I noticed in manufacturing, when you over automate things that have high level of creativity, and it's not a product that will be repeated, like a mold, right? You create a mold, and that mold, let's say an injection mold. If you design and manufacture an injection mold, you may have different cavities within the mold. You may have one or two other molds made, but these molds will make thousands, hundreds of thousands, or millions of parts, depending on the type of mold that you're making. But the mold itself, you only have to make one or maybe two. So you're not making high volume number of molds for this particular part that it's going to be making. Let's say a bumper, all right? A fascia. So you'll make one, maybe two, maybe, all right? And this mold may cost $1 million to make, but it'll make 500,000 bumpers, 500,000, let's say, fascias. All right. It doesn't make sense to super automate every single process for that mold. Like, for example, these molds are very big. All right. It takes a lot of time to cut. Right. Do you really get that much cost savings if you have a tool changer for the CNC machine for a mold that is only a one-off? No. It makes a lot of sense if you're making 500,000 parts on the CNC machine, but that's not the case with this. You're making a mold. So using tool changers for a mold doesn't make sense because the tool can break and the machine doesn't know that the tool broke. The stock's still there. It changes the cutter for the next operation and it breaks because the steel stock is still there. Classic example that if you automate something because people want to be lazy, it actually costs you more money and you lose time. So it depends on the operation within your company. Now let's look at that. Now that's an engineering application that I'm talking about, where what I saw that when people try to automate certain processes in manufacturing, especially in mold making, that it didn't work, especially if they were low production items. Now, high production items, it makes sense because you proved out the cutting process and you want to speed it up. Maybe increase the speeds or feeds, maybe lower them a little bit, whatever, to fine tune it because you're making lots of them. All right. But what happens at work where you're not doing a lot of something, but you only do it rarely? Does it make sense to actually automate that? Because if you do it rarely, then you want to make sure that you are slow and methodical to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. But if you over automate all these different processes within the office, you're not going to have the institutional knowledge to be able to think through a problem. You automate your budgeting, you will stop really understanding what the line items are in your budget. If you over automate a process, what happens when your system that you thought was self-contained, there's a problem that happens with a customer and now it's harder to be able to solve the customer's problem and the customer gets upset and leaves. Or let's say you have a process in finance where you're trying to automate, let's say, some sort of analytics. All right, you feed in all this data in theory and the computer's just going to give you, some sort of utopic understanding of your business. Well, there are such a thing. There are individuals that need to have finance background, being able to plan, and budgeting, and forecasting, and do the analysis. Well, people would say, well, you just can automate that in AI. Well, can an AI really give you the insight of a particular business, especially when things are changing? It may give you some insight, but let's say if you compared an AI to a human doing FP&A, the AI may be quicker, but the individual would be probably more being able to adapt to a changing environment. And this is part of the reason why they do FP&A in a company. because of changing environments. Revenues are going down, or expenses are increasing, or there is a pulse of inflation. How's that going to affect your suppliers and all this stuff? Do you really need an AI to do that, or do you need really good employees? And there's the problem. You don't have good employees. Most employees are lazy and stupid. So if you take an expert in, let's say, FP&A, could their productivity increase with the use of an AI tool to help with analytics? Yes. If you use the AI tool with a non-expert, they will get something from the AI and not fully understand what's happening. And their emergent properties, some sort of negative externality may happen. I have not been convinced by AI in terms of back office operations, especially in FP&A, where a individual that has a decent amount of experience and creativity. I haven't seen where an individual is worse compared to an AI system when fully trained. Usually these people, like for example, people that are experienced in, let's say, back office operations, they basically know what is going wrong with the company within 20 seconds, in 20 minutes. All 20 minutes, an experienced FP&A. 20 minutes, no matter what the company is, how big it is, how many business units they have, 20 minutes. All you need to do is see the balance sheet, the income statements, and the cash flow statements for about 5 years out. And that's the consolidated version and the business and the individual business units. And from that, within 20 minutes, you can determine what's wrong with the company. Now, maybe an AI can do it in 5 minutes, or maybe an AI can do it in 30 minutes, or 30 seconds. I mean, maybe 5 minutes or 30 seconds, the AI can do it. But the thing is that by having a human doing it, then you're not like going, okay, what can we do to improve the situation? Now, the AI may have some creative ability, but I don't think that the AI actually has as much creative ability to think outside of the box, because it's trained based on a certain data set. So if you are in a different environment, you may need to sell certain business units to have the cash flow to be able to do something different, especially say R&D for something. The AI might not think that. The AI might say, continue investing in that unit that you thought a human may want to spin off, and let's say, create new products within that unit that you wanted to spin off. The AI is recommending, and you try that, you waste the company's money, and all of a sudden you're worse off. So now, at that level, I don't think any company is going to just automatically use the AI, but this is what people are thinking about using AI. And if you keep humans out of the decision making, if you keep humans out of the creative process, there is going to be an emergent property where the company will not perform as well. Now, what you have is a lot of non-traded companies out there, small businesses that are K1 type businesses, and you have the owner that wants their distribution at the end of the year, all right? And they want to shrink the cost as much so their distribution is the highest, have the highest revenue and the lowest cost. That's the mindset of the K1 owner, all right? Now, some of these people are saying, well, let's just use AI and I don't need as many employees. But the thing is that your company may not be as truly productive and be able to grow because you're eliminating the creative side of your workforce, because you've cut your expenses with labor costs. So the AI only knows what it's trained to know. And it can do a little bit of stretch, like a stretch goal outside of its training set. But the thing is that, if you have a K1 owner that wants to just eliminate as many jobs as possible, then for that business, it may be more profitable, but does that mean that it'll be more profitable for 5 or 6 years post the implementation of the AI? It might not be, because you've lost employees. This idea that you don't need employees to make money, especially with a large business, doesn't make sense, because eventually the things that you thought you could automate will start to break down. There'll be some sort of breaking down. Like, for example, a social system that has a lot of different variables, a lot of feedback loops. All right, there's emergent properties that happen. So the more variables that are in your business, the more pruning you may have to do. So and things may drift away from what the original intent was with the agents. So you'll have to have someone coming in to prune, to make sure that whatever is happening is being done correctly. All right. So now what people are thinking is, it's like, well, this is just kind of like cybernetics. Well, cybernetics has not, cybernetics can speed things up, but there can be also negative externalities with cybernetics. So now, if you have a whole group of people, a whole world out there doing this, cybernetics, with the AI is cybernetics, really, all right, and automate all these things, then what is the average worker going to buy? And so what will happen is your revenues will start to decline. And then to use these AIs, a lot of people at the moment, as they're building them and using them, they have to use these tokens. So it's costing you to use these AIs. Or you have to subscribe to a certain software or a certain provider. You have to, subscribe to, let's say, OpenAI, or subscribe to Gemini, or subscribe to Anthropic, or whatever, right? So it's an additional subscription cost. And so what you're basically doing is you're getting rid of your knowledge base, and you're getting rid of your worker, or some of your workers, and now you are beholden to a company to think for you. So they're basically saying, stop having a human employee work for, let's say, $100,000, and we're going to charge you $30,000 for a subscription to a software. You're saving $70,000. So the K1 owner is viewing, wow, that's $70,000 that will go into my pocket. But if you have a lot of people doing that, then perhaps the actual revenues will start to go down. And it may go down more than 70%. Or it may go down more than, 70%. So it just depends on what that feedback is to the actual revenue stream. See, everyone's so focused on expense, speed up for productivity. But what's the feedback from people that are not employed to the degree they used to be, and they start cutting their expenses? And what will happen is that if this does take hold at the societal level, then there will be a great deflation. And when the great deflation takes place, that means home prices crash. That means tax revenues go down. That means insolvency for the bonds to be able to pay the bond debt. Cars and mortgages and all that start to default. So are we setting ourselves up for the great deflation because of over automating our society? I think so. Now, it just depends on when that feedback to revenues starts to be a negative externality that starts to emerge out of the world. When people are worried about their job, do you think they'll spend more? Do you think that they'll decide to purchase a home, or a bigger home, or a new car, or whatever, go out on a vacation if they're worried about their job? Of course not. And everybody's worried about AI. Everybody is worried about it. Even the people that are making the AI at the software companies, they're getting axed. So that you can see in some cases that there is a negative feedback within a sector or a certain industry. But what happens in the aggregate of the society when you over automate your processes and the workers no longer are working? You lose at the company level, you lose your knowledge-based workers. You lose that company history. Your employees are efficient, not just because of the tasks they do, but because they understand the unique processes of the actual corporation. Now, when those employees are gone, and the aggregate level, the unemployment rate is going up, or the underemployed level is going up, and people are concerned and they pull back and entrench, revenues for these companies will start to go down. So being human, you need some tolerance of inefficiency. That's part of being human. That's actually where the creative magic is. For example, a purely efficient system would be that employee clocks in and does their job and doesn't take a break and is completely efficient and clocks out and they're done. That's an efficient employee. Well, sometimes you need some downtime to actually have an employee think about how to improve their processes or think about what it means. Maybe they see something that is a warning sign of something that may actually make the company better off or worse off, and they want to warn everybody. But if people are, if the job description is designed in such a way and managed through a micromanager, and everything is spelled out, and that person is only a robot for the system, you know, you're eliminating the creativity of humans. Now, some people prefer jobs like that where they don't have to think, and they just do. But those types of jobs will be automated out. But there's something about humans being a little bit inefficient. You need time to think and less micromanaging, and a company can actually be better. There is such a thing as just giving some tolerance to the employees to just have slack in the system instead of micromanaging them completely. And I'm concerned that what's going to happen is with AI being implemented in the back office or the mid office of corporations, that you're going to have this lack of creativity. There's going to be a lack of slack. There's going to be this big drive for efficiencies and micromanaging. And when things don't work, what is the let's say a project happens and a manager goes to a bunch of employees. We want you to automate your processes within the next 6 months by 30%. So whatever you do, 30% is going to an AI agent. And we're going to train you on Vibe to create the code and create the AI agents and blah, blah, blah. So the employees are gaining a skill by learning Vibe code or whatever software you use. All right. So there's one aspect that's helpful for the employee. But then let's say that this 30% efficiency, in reality, it only gets to 20 or 25%. There's a 5% efficiency that couldn't be had because of some sort of hiccup with the process within the company. And the manager is upset because that manager has to tell the COO that they're going to have a 30% efficiency across the board. And so they're all upset because their bonus is tied to if they can get a 30% efficiency using AI. So they put all the stress on the employees below them to try to get that extra 5%. So there's this micromanaging of it, and they get upset because it can't be done or whatever. But the 30% was just an arbitrary number. So there's going to be stresses within a company, and people are going to say they don't want to be micromanaged, and they're going to leave. Or they see that if you can, improve your process by 30%, and you're not seeing additional work coming to you to be able to do for the company, the writing's on the wall that they're going to push you out. And people are going to stop buying. People are going to start, retrenching. And that's not good for the society, and it could be deflationary. Especially when we have $40 trillion in government debt. So I'm not so sure. Now, I'm not a doomsayer or anything in terms of the economy. Don't bet against America. Somehow we find a way to do it right, but it's only because 20% of the people are actually doing the work and 80% are lazy and stupid. But there are some negative externalities that can happen with AI, and you're starting to see it with Anthropic right now. It broke out, and now it can find all these vulnerabilities for all these different systems like banking. And other AI systems can mimic what Anthropic just did. And now every system out there, everything that, it should be secure is not secure anymore. So now it's getting to the point where they've created something that has caused financial harm or potential financial harm to individuals and to the society at large and to companies. There needs to be regulation. Now, that if you make a model, it has to go through a government agency and it has to be tested to make sure that it doesn't cause an externality. Now, the problem is that other countries that are making AI systems may not be regulated. And so now you have a big problem. So you're constantly chasing something that should have never been made. So I only see negative externalities with AI. Now, in some fine, or very narrow areas of the economy, AI could be good and useful, but not massive implementation across the country. Not at all. I don't find that as a great way to improve the society. If anything, I think it may be deflationary. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. You get it in lemongrass and also in peppermint. Very high quality. This will help the health of your skin, help with your pores, and neutralize because it has the structural nano silver. Also, magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will boost up your immune system and help with your brain function. And vitamin C and magnesium helps with your immune system, your brain function, and your skin. You can stack it with the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium is super important. A lot of people aren't taking enough magnesium to improve their brain function. And magnesium helps with the efficacy of vitamin D3. So please go to my store and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is super important for your health. Why? It's a gene expression cofactor, so it will allow for your genes to be expressed properly within your cell. It'll help to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis if they're infected. It will also help to absorb calcium and build denser bone if you're doing resistance training. And vitamin D3 helps with your cardiovascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the vitamin D3, and remember, magnesium increases the efficacy of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 works better by taking magnesium. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
And they're shocking at first, minus 0.5% on industrial production. We're up looking for up 1/10. But when you see the revision, it makes more sense. Up 0.7 now replaces up 0.2. So the minus 0.5% now is a mean between the 2 months starts to look better. As a standalone, minus 0.5% would be the weakest since July of 24. But when we look at up 0.7, that's really a very strong number. And that means we now have back-to-back numbers that are strong because we had 0.7 in January Now we have a 0.7 in February, pretty strong start. If we look at utilization rates, we're looking for a number above 76. We come in below 75.7, weakest since Nov of 25, and unlike industrial production, we went from 76.3 to 76.1 in February. We see that interest rates remain in a very, very consolidated range, hitting very key points like 4.25 and 10s. Right now at 4.27, it's down 2 basis points. Swap demonstrator return after a short break.
All right, let's take a look at what's going on with Al Jazeera.
34 years, as Donald Trump mentioned. This is key, of course, to what the United States is trying to do with Iran. One of Iran's demands is that they pressure the Israelis to stop the attacks on the civilians and Hezbollah targets in southern Lebanon. The United States certainly has put that on the table. But Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli leader, has said that that's not going to happen. They will continue their operation. This is separate from whatever the United States agrees with Iran. Certainly Donald Trump had confidence that the two leaders would meet and certainly talk at some point on Thursday. But from both the Lebanese side and the Israeli side, there's no confirmation that these talks are taking place.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much. Alan Fisher from the White House. The Israeli military has just destroyed the Qasmiyah bridge in southern Lebanon. The attack effectively cuts off large parts of the south from the rest of the country. Israel has repeatedly targeted key infrastructure and crossings in the south. Let's speak to Obaida Hito. He joins us live from Tyre. So first of all, before we get into the actual strikes and destruction that's taking place, take us through, Obaida, the reaction, the public reaction to Donald Trump's statement that leaders of Israel and Lebanon will be talking. This is quite a sensitive and divisive issue in Lebanon, isn't it?
Absolutely, quite divisive indeed. But I think people here are seeing this chain of events as just a part of this this PR campaign that Trump and Netanyahu are putting on. They want to deliver victories to both of their domestic audiences. Netanyahu continues to carry out the invasion, and he's given the orders to occupy and invade Lebanon and continue to target people here with impunity. And I think this is the way people in general in Lebanon are understanding it. Now, there is a huge portion of the Lebanese population that feels like they've been forced into this situation, that they didn't choose this war, that it was forced upon them. But at the end of the day, what's happening on the ground is that people are being displaced from their homes. Over 1 million Lebanese people are displaced currently. And the way things are moving forward, it's not clear when any of them are going to actually be able to even go back or think about going back to their homes, let alone if their home has been destroyed or not, if it's in a place that's currently occupied or not. The situation is quite intense. And actually, even if the Lebanese government decides to talk to Israeli officials, it's not going to change things in 1 day or 2 days here in Lebanon. There's a huge humanitarian crisis unfolding, and part of the reason is because of these strikes that we continue to see on critical infrastructure like hospitals, targeting ambulances, paramedics, and bridges. The last bridge that connects North and South Lebanon has been completely destroyed, cut off. It was partially damaged in the past. The military a few days ago received a warning from Israel that they were going to target that bridge, but today it's been completely destroyed. We went and visited that bridge just shortly after it was targeted, and this is what we saw. We're here on the Qasmiyah Bridge in southern Lebanon, which connects the northern part of Lebanon with the southern part of Lebanon, crossing over the Litani River. And you can see this huge ditch that's been dug into the earth where this bridge was. The river runs right under this bridge. It's one of the main bridges actually crossing over between northern and southern Lebanon. It connects Tyre to the city of Sidon, and then later on to Beirut and the rest of the northern part of the country. This is a main thoroughfare here. It's very close to the coastline. You can see there in the edge, that's where the river runs. Now it's completely destroyed. This is the last remaining operational bridge crossing over the Litani River. This is a huge tactical strike in terms of basically cutting off all supply lines to anybody who's here in the south. Israel continues to say that it's targeting this kind of critical infrastructure in order to prevent Hezbollah from moving weapons and fighters and moving around in the country in general. We've got more jets in the sky, and now they're telling us to move out of this area. But what you're seeing here is the result of a systematic destruction of critical infrastructure here in Lebanon. The situation continues to escalate despite people here expecting some sort of break in the violence, but that's not come as soon as people would have liked. Currently, there are around 100,000 people here on the southern part of this river. Essentially, now they've been cut off from the rest of the country. It's going to make it extremely difficult for any kind of humanitarian aid to reach southern Lebanon, for any civilians to come and visit or to escape from these areas. People were using some makeshift pathways. The military had patched up the bridge after it was struck multiple times, but now it's completely destroyed. You can see what's left of it there, this big metal structure, as they're trying to evacuate us from this location. So we're going to have to leave it here. This is the situation in southern Lebanon. This is something that has been adding up over 6 weeks now of violence here in the south of the country. What people really want is for this to stop, but how that's going to happen is not clear yet.
Okay, we're going to go to Fox News. They posted a video with General Kellogg. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. We're in the allergy season. So a great way to mitigate allergies and that throat irritation that you might have is to get the drops and the lozenges, the structural nanosilver drops and lozenges. You can use them for the allergy season or the cold season. Just be prepared. I have in stock the honey and lemon and the cherry flavor. I also have orange splash with vitamin C and Manuka honey. So get the drops and the lozenges. They're made from structural nanosilver. They'll help to protect your oral pharynx and those epithelial cells, which is super important to help boost up your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off.
Our team can help connect you with additional support programs.
We put our 2 destroyers through. Minesweeping operations are ongoing. What President Trump has done is taken that leverage, taken Iran trying to hold the entire world's economies hostage, has taken that off the table now with this action.
So you have a ceasefire that goes for another week. We'll play it day by day and see how it goes. Right now, we want to look at sweeping the strait. How you look for mines, how you find them. If the mines are even there. Remember what the Iranians said, okay? They said this is the hazardous area. That's where the mines are out there. They told all these international carriers, look out. But the U.S. says you have to find it. And we don't even know if what the Iranians are saying are true. In the meantime, this is the international route that you have. Into the Persian Gulf and out of the Persian Gulf. This is Oman, that's the United Arab Emirates. This is Iran over here. The Iranians want you to go this way, closer to their land, between their islands to get in, and this way to get out. And that way they can find the money, they can cash that in, and make sure that these international carriers pay the Iranians. Right now, the U.S. military, the Navy, is trying to starve them. What would the Iranians do? This is a possibility now. Mine types, if indeed they exist in the ocean today. You got a floating mine out there. You've got moored mines that are on the bottom of the ocean. And shallow water, like the Persian Gulf, this would be a very good tool. You've got what's known as a limpet mine that can attach itself to the side of a vessel. It can be very lethal if they go off. And you have seabed mines here on the ocean floor as well. We also have this animation we can show you. These are
sensor devices from a U.S. Navy ship rather. They can drop this drone and then move through the ocean, move through the water, detect, identify, and destroy that sea mine before it becomes a hostile carrier for the U.S. Navy that's trying to operate in the ocean. But to date, I want to emphasize, there has been no example just yet of any ship being hit or any mine being found.
But the ships have to have insurance in order to go through, and the insurers don't feel confident. Maybe they will get more so as our troops are there checking it out, and if they feel confident there's not there. But if you're talking about millions of dollars in cargo and you have an insurance situation, that is the problem. Let's get much more on this with retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He's a former special envoy to Ukraine and co-chair of the America First Policy Institute's America Security Initiative. Wanted to play this, or show you this, two things. Here's a Wall Street Journal editorial board saying that the blockade is a crisis for Iran. The economic damage is immediate and threatens the regime if it lasts. And here is Mr. Malecki. He is from FDD. Watch here.
They have probably around 13 to 15 for 16 days enough storage for oil, to store oil that they can't export. I think in a matter of 2 months, we're going to see regime really reaching the point of not being able to pay salaries and riots and defections within the regime.
All right, let's get your take on it, General. Good to see you.
Dana, good to see you. Thanks for having me. Look, I'm already the next step. What I mean by the next step is I go to blockade, and where we're at is where we go next. If the blockade has to be discontinued or continued, and you add something onto it, which means actually going not into the middle of Iran, but taking like Kharg Island and Rock Island and places like that with our Marines, 82nd Airborne or somebody like that. You know, I would tell the Iranians, look, if there's a ship, we put them through there, and a mine goes off, you're done. We're done with this. We're fed up with you. We're finished off. The concern I've got is we're negotiating still with an autocratic, theocratic government. When you look at people like their foreign minister, Arachi, these are hardcore revolutionary guards. And it's the younger crew that's come on board. They're still there. They've still been indoctrinated for over 40 plus years of hating America. And that hasn't changed. So you're dealing with maybe some regime adjustments, but not regime change out there. And I think we need to take that into consideration. And part of that consideration is we just said, we're tired of you guys. We're done with it. We're going to change the dynamics of the Middle East the next 30 or 40 years. We can sweep the Gulf right now with the minesweepers coming in, with this forum in Japan, bring them down, the LCS, the destroyers, as was shown, which Bill showed in a great animation there. But there's always a chance of what happening. You know, in the Army, when you lay a minefield, you have to record that minefield. When you do with the Navy, in the sea, we don't know what's out there. And I bet you they're not disciplined enough to figure out where those mines are. So we don't know. And there's random 1 or 2 mines out there. Yep, probably it's going to happen.
Okay, so Maria Bartiromo sat down with the president. I'm going to play a clip of that. Ask you a specific question about who's in charge. First the clip, watch.
It's a new regime, okay? And we find them pretty reasonable, to be honest with you. By comparison, pretty reasonable. I have talks with everybody, but it's very effective. I think you're going to have a great deal. You're doing a great job for the country and for the world.
So now the Wall Street Journal says Iran's regime has changed for the worse. The U.S.-Israeli attack fast-tracked the ascent of hardliners and apocalyptic religious followers, raising doubts about a lasting peace. There were reports over the weekend out of Islamabad that those who actually went to these talks from Iran did not even have the authority to make a decision or sign off on any deal. Are we confident that we know who's in command and control of Iran and who has the authority to give us a yes or a no?
Bill, thanks. I don't think we do. I think now here's an interesting dynamic that I picked up. Just over the last 2 days, you've seen President Pezeshkian actually start to make some comments. In the past, the president of Iran was like a nobody. He really didn't do anything. And we went with the hardliners, the Revolutionary Guards. But the one that they sent there were like Arachi, who's their foreign minister. He's a hardliner. And when he wrote the book on negotiations, when you give our president, President Trump, full credit, he has done something that no other president has done. And he's changing the dynamics of the Middle East for centuries. And I think, I'd like to see the job get finished and just get them out of there. Not a regime adjustment, but you get like a regime change. But you're starting to see signs of that. When you see Pasheshkian start to make comments, Arachi not being able to make a decision, the Khamenei is really, he hasn't come out, the supreme leader, and the Revolutionary Guard reports to the supreme leader. There's two organizations out there that have military power. They're actually army, which is different than the Revolutionary Guards and the Bajis, those are the thugs in the streets out there. The Iranians have killed more people right now than we lost in the Korean War, and that's got to be eliminated. So it's all about the people out there. I'm hoping that we're going to see a more reasonable government, back to a stable of a normal nation. But that is yet to be seen. Let's let the blockade play itself out. But there's going to be a next step. If there is a next step, then I think the president will take it.
All right, the market is open in New York. The S&P 500 is trading at 7,034. VIX is at 18. Now, my target for the S&P 500 is 7,400 to 7,800 by year end. We may even get closer to 8,000 by year end. Just depends. But because it's an election year, midterm elections in the United States in November, I'm lowballing the forecast at the moment. But 7,400 to 7,800 by year end. All right? If you've been paying attention to me since the war began with Iran, so the last 5 weeks or so, and you started buying in to the market, your new deployed capital would have made a decent return in a short amount of time. So if you just pay attention to me, I can get your health to improve, and I can also help you navigate through the tumultuous times that we're in. I know what I'm doing. All you got to do is just do what I tell you to do. So now the currency markets are relatively stable. The euro is trading at 1.17. The Japanese yen is trading at 159. So everything's stable there. VIX is at 18. That's stable. Bitcoin has been ticking up. It's just under 75,000. Natural gas is at 2.625. And oil is trading at 92.16. Now with oil, if things continue to de-escalate and ships are moving through the strait, then we're going to see oil soon start trading in the 80 handle, that, like 85, 80, high 80 range. But it's possible that the United States will need to use kinetic means in the region. Now, Trump said that, it's almost done. So the chances of it going down are much higher than oil going up. Okay? So that means that the immediate trading range is probably around 91, maybe 92 to about 94. I think what has been established now is a 94 barrier for the WTI. Now, Brent is now trading higher than WTI. Last week it was the opposite. WTI was trading higher than Brent. And that's not supposed to happen. All right. So things are now moving back to normal correlations, normal spreads, and it's slowly starting to drift down. Now, if there is kinetic means, then we're going to probably retest the 94 barrier for WTI and probably break it. And then you're looking at 96, 97, maybe 98, depending on how bad it is, maybe even 100. But I think right now we have established a barrier at 94. Now the question is, will it break 90 and stay below 90? So there's this trading range, like around 90 to about 94, right? In the near term. If we start seeing lots of flow of tankers filled with oil, no problems, no kinetic military means by the United States on Iran, no missiles being launched by the Iranians to Israel or to the GCC, then we're going to start to continue to see oil drift lower into the 80 handle. Now, that would mean that UCO, which is a 3 times leveraged ETF, should be going down, and it has been going down. But there is some fluctuation, especially in pre-market, what I've been noticing for several trading sessions. The pre-market for the ETF for oil went as high as 42.19 and then started drifting down. And right now it's trading at 41.76. But if we break 90, we should see UCO also probably break 40. And we should start seeing creeping up SCO. So if UCO starts to go down, SCO will start to go up. And SCO is a 3 times leveraged ETF where it will appreciate if oil continues to go down. And yesterday, in terms of percentages, UCO went down and SCO went up at approximately about the same amount. Once in a while, you'll see that, and I've noticed this maybe 2 trading sessions ago, where SCO actually fell. This must have been Monday. I think it was Monday. SCO fell more than UCO fell more than SCO. And there was a difference in terms of movement within those ETFs by about 2%. One went up 3%, the other went down 5%. So there was a little bit of a tracking error with that hedge. Now that doesn't normally happen. And I think that was just the veracity of the sell-off in oil that caused that issue while people were repositioning. But I think over time, what's going to happen is that oil is going to start drifting and it's going to test that 90 and it's going to break, assuming that there's no further kinetic means in the region, military. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Bloomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. This will target multiple systems that will help with your brain function, cardiovascular health, and musculature, rev up your metabolism, increase your energy levels, boost up your immune system and your endocrine system. It'll help to slow down the aging process, and you'll be able to control your A1C levels. This stacks really well with the Gladiator barley and the heirloom barley. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Bloomer Boost. You'll feel the effects of this within 72 hours when you start taking it. This is a month's supply. You'll have a steady burn of energy. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll be able to concentrate better. It's a great product that you should be taking every day. It stacks really well also with the C60. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. A digestive enzyme complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need to take care of your pancreas. You don't want to be a Steve Jobs, okay? So digestive enzyme complex will help to break up proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, help you to reduce the load on your pancreas and allow you to absorb your nutrients easier. If you're an athlete, younger or older, you'll also benefit from digestive enzyme complex because it'll help you to break up your pre or post-workout fueling. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. And omega-3. Cardiovascular health is super important. And better cardiovascular health will also improve your brain function. So use the omega-3, take it every day, bring down the LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, bring down inflammation, and by doing that, you're reducing plaque formation. You're improving the health of your actual blood vessels. And with better blood flow, you're giving your brain the nutrients that it needs to maintain the health of the neurons and the neural connections. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the omega-3. Very important. Make sure you use discount 5. I want you to save some money. All right. I know things are more expensive, but use discount 5. You get $5 off. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And if you like the work that I do, please help support by getting the products, sharing the links, and if you would like to make a donation, you can donate on my website. All right. With that, I want to listen to the fleet commander. This is Cipher Brief. Explains Iran crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this was published 52 minutes ago.
It's good to be on the Cipher Brief.
It's my pleasure to welcome retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan and his friends Colin Kidd to the Cipher Brief studio. Kid, welcome. It's very good to see you. Really appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks, Suzanne. It's always good to be on the Cipher Brief. It's you get right down to what's important and what's not important, which is what we're going to do today.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. You served as commander of the Fifth Fleet. You've got incredible experience in the Middle East. I know you've been watching very carefully developments as things have happened. We've seen headlines that range from the Strait is blocked to the Strait is not blocked to it's kind of blocked. Can you just kind of level set for us right now, Kid? Like what you're seeing happening in the Strait? Can you make it a little easier for us to digest this?
Yeah, and I think the way that I'll start out framing that, Suzanne, because it really is the question is, what are we really doing? And the reason it gets a little bit confusing is because of the way this started before we even started. What was the situation even before we started the blockade? Which, if we start with that, then we can layer the blockade on and make it a little bit easier to unpack. So before the U.S. began its blockade, basically what you had was a Strait of Hormuz that wasn't really being used by the oil carriers to move in and out because it deemed by the insurers, by the companies that have the crews, not really safe for them to go through because they weren't really sure. And if they did go through, there was potentially having to pay a toll to the Iranians and such. So the traffic that was flowing in and out of the straits, except for some stragglers, tended to be supporting Iran, right? So that would be oil that's flowing out, their energy that was flowing out. And at the same time, things that go into the ports of Iran to sustain, their economy. So think of imports and exports. So what the U.S. blockade is doing is, and at the same time, the Iranians said they mine the straits. They actually said they mine the straits and they don't know where the mines are. So that's kind of interesting. But it shows you a little how much, and if you look at that a little deeper, it kind of shows you that obviously the work that CENTCOM was doing against the Navy and against their capability was effective in terms of they couldn't get out there and put what you would call a legitimate minefield in place where they know where the mines were and could ensure that those things wouldn't show up somewhere else. So with that being the situation before, you had this, I call it restricted flow, and energy not going through the Gulf, LNG definitely not getting out, container ships not getting in and out. And as I said, just these ships related to Iran coming out, and they profited from that. So what happened with what the U.S. has done is says, why should we allow the Iranians to profit when they're not allowing, because of the environment here, mining the straits and their threats against shipping and the requirement to pay a toll, let's stop them from being able to profit during the same time period. So the U.S.'s mission was to not allow ships that are to enter Iranian ports or leave Iranian ports. And then the methodology for that isn't that you go put the ships off the coast of each port and manage all that flow there. Instead, you sit in the Gulf of Oman and you, with surveillance and other assets, pay attention to what's coming in and out of the ports. And as they flow through the Straits of Hormuz, and in some cases from the ports that are outside the Strait of Hormuz, as things try to flow in or out, then the U.S. interdicts those ships and tells them to turn around and go back. So that's what's going on now. And the idea is to apply pressure.
Yeah. Let me ask you then, and I really appreciate the reframing of this. I think it's really helpful because it's so easy to get lost in all the details. But Iran is now threatening to block shipping from the Persian Gulf, from the Sea of Oman, and the Red Sea. So if this were to happen, how significant of a change would this be?
Well, the Iranians don't really have more capability than you see them doing right now, right? So they can say what they want. They can certainly try to bring the Houthis into this and and try to constrain Red Sea traffic again. But up until this point, the Houthis, other than one missile launch against the Israelis, have been relatively quiet. I don't know if they have the sway to bring the Houthis into this, because if the Houthis come into it, that puts them subject to some of the things that you saw go on before. So I think the other thing the Iranians threatened to do was if you constrain our ports, we'll attack Gulf nation ports. And so right now, we haven't seen that happen. We also haven't seen the U.S. resume airstrikes. So what that really leaves is, I call it wiggle room, but it certainly leaves room to maneuver a negotiating table for both sides, right? Neither one of them blatantly breaking the ceasefire, so to speak, in terms of strikes against each other. There's been some transgressions here or there by the Iranians, but not what we were seeing in the past. So I think both of them, don't necessarily want to completely derail that and get back to where we were before. Not after just one meeting in Pakistan, which, as you know, in negotiations tend to frame the processes and procedures and things that where agreement is and disagreement and how close you are. No one really expected that all of a sudden we go in there and come out with a signed agreement. That there's too much to work out. So I think what you should be looking for now is how are ships reacting to the U.S. blockade?
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you as well, and let me just dig in a little bit deeper on that mine sweeping topic, because it's been in the headlines for the last few weeks. The way that you've laid this out is very interesting to understand that there is no sort of rhyme or reason. The Iranians don't know where these mines are. How do you start to undertake a mine sweeping operation under conditions like this?
Well, the United States some time ago has moved their capability from mine sweeping away from ships and into autonomous vessels. And I think you're aware of what Brad Cooper, is now the CENTCOM commander, started himself, was task force in the Gulf. It's 159, it's called, focused on using autonomous vessels in a much greater way than has been in the past, right? And the Navy has been adopting this more broadly. But the point being is that the capability for mine sweeping now lies, that there's an element of this that is weighted towards autonomous capability to sweep with ships. Think of it, these things look like long, big torpedoes. They can be sent out. They'll navigate themselves, run back and forth in a pattern to map out both the floor and the surface of the sea, IDing where mines would be, if there's any free-floating mines or bottom mines, identifying them. And then the second piece of that would be to then tag them and send something in to destroy or make inert the ones that are in the waterways that are important, and the other ones you leave for a later period of time. I don't know that I can tell you that we're not already doing that. You wouldn't know if we were doing that. And our allies in the region have a capability to do this also. So when it comes to capabilities to do this mission, it's less about ships and more about the capability that we have to be able to clear the mines, regardless of whether you have ships or not. And so these mines, though not being known, the Iranians not knowing, tells me that they were likely mines that could be adrift, which means they could move anywhere. They may not even be in the vicinity of the straits. They could have gone to all sorts of places. Really hard to predict where they ended up. But we are seeing traffic flow through the northern part of the Gulf back and forth unimpeded. So the sense here is that if they did something, it's right in more that constrained waterway.
Yeah, and it seems like a terrible way to sort of organize anything. Let me ask you as well, as you're kind of looking at whether we're going to continue talks, which I'm also glad you laid out the framework for sort of how those talks come together. I think it's really interesting to understand sort of how that sausage gets made. But as those conversations are ongoing and they have left some wiggle room there, what are some of the next things you're going to be looking for in terms of either escalation or indicators that we might be moving closer to some kind of agreement that would lead to a permanent end to this war?
Well, the first thing I'd look for is, does the ceasefire get extended, right? So, and there's already been indications kind of coming out. I don't know if you can trust them or not, because the one thing that is hard to measure is the rhetoric on both sides, because it can be all over the map because there's posturing going on, right? Hey, we're going to do this or we could do that, which is why I tend to focus on what's really happening and do the analysis from there, as opposed to, hey, what's, what are people saying? But there are indications that there may be a second round, so you look for that. And then coming out of that, I would look for if there's an extension or not. That would be the key things that I would look for. Clearly, both countries went into this with some expectation to actually get somewhere. I mean, the U.S. put several hundred of folks associated with the negotiating team in place, and the Iranians put something like 70 plus folks there. So this wasn't just a couple people getting together saying, hey, do we agree or not? So that's what I would look for. Those would be my leading edge indicators on if there's a potential for this to keep moving forward in a positive way. And the other thing I would look for is if someone breaks in a direct way the agreed upon ceasefire before the time runs out.
Mm-hmm. Excellent things. And I also appreciate the fact that there are several hundred of people, as you have mentioned, a lot of these people are experts in particular parts of what is being negotiated. For example, in this case, you're negotiating the future of Iran's nuclear program as one of the main issues on the table. So the subject matter expertise you would need on that, I would think, would be rather intense.
And you hope that that's all part of the negotiating team. That hasn't really been revealed. It's the numbers that kind of came out because people could count them. How it was constructed, I don't know, but I would assume that if the Vice President of the United States is going over there, he's going to go over there with a team that can get down and roll up sleeves and get to some kind of a solution. I don't want you to leave this in an optimistic note, because I believe the sides still are relatively far apart in a couple of the key areas. It's been rightly talked about on many of these, in many of these different kind of think tanks and the rest that, and even in the media, that the core issues still revolve around nuclear and whether the Iranians can enrich. And the other key thing is any kind of control of the Straits of Hormuz, different from what it was before the start of this conflict.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Retired Vice Admiral Kevin Donegan, former commander of the Navy's Fifth Fleet. It's such a pleasure to have you here in the Cipher Brief studio. I want to thank you for taking the time.
All right. We're going to take a look at the markets here. The UCO is trading at 42.07. So it's going up a little bit since the market opened, and it is approaching the pre-market high of 42.19. Equities are retracing a little bit. It's at 7,010 right now, with VIX increasing slightly at 19. And oil is moving at about, it's moving up a little bit. It's trading at 93.37. So like I said, there's probably going to be this trading range. We're going to maybe retest the 94 level soon here. I don't know if there's anything that new came out in the news. That nothing seems to be popping up on the screen, but we'll continue to watch. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Heirloom Barley. Heirloom Barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. Now, by doing this regularly, you're going to improve your immune system and your endocrine system. You can also improve your joint health by bringing down inflammation, and you're helping with your cardiovascular health because you're reducing plaque formation. Plaque formation starts by having more inflammation at the vascular level by the intima of the vascular, or the blood vessel. The intima is the inside of the actual vessel. If there's inflammation, it can cause a micro tear. And if that micro tear happens, then if you have oxidized LDL, then you get plaque formation, all right? Well, if you reduce inflammation, you have less micro tears. If you have less oxidized LDL by soaking up free radicals, then you will have less plaque formation. That's really important for your vascular system. A lot of people don't understand how plaque is formed, but keeping inflammation down and soaking up free radicals, preventing oxidized LDL, is really important. And with better blood flow, you have a better hippocampus and better connections with your neurons. And that's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Now, ashwagandha root will bring down cortisol levels and help to control your blood glucose levels. That will reduce inflammation and boost up your immune system. Super important. Lignans also helps with the immune system and endocrine system, brings down inflammation, and soaks up free radicals. And it's dual purpose. It's going to help your cardiovascular health too, and your brain function. Bringing down inflammation at the brain level, at the cerebral level, is going to be able to allow for your neurons to be in an environment where they can function properly and fold the proteins properly. If you have high inflammation, you can have vascular events, you can have bleeding of the brain, or you can have an occlusion that could take place. With high inflammation, you can have misfolded proteins and end up having amyloidosis. And with inflammation, what happens is that chronic inflammation of the brain, your neural network starts to recede. So you're not thinking as well. Your memory starts to decline. So you want to prevent that. And you can prevent that by proper diet, proper exercise, but also taking the proper supplementation to bring down that inflammation and soak up those free radicals and keep that vascular system healthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the lignans, the ashwagandha root, stacks really well, and the heirloom barley. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. I want people to save some money. I know things are more expensive now because of gas prices and everything else. So it's important that you invest in your body. It's important that you maintain, even though it's, things are tough out there, in terms of finances, to maintain your health, because you're going to have compound interest building up with your health by doing an anti-aging protocol day in, day out, month in, month out, year in, year out. When you're doing that on a regular basis over a long period of time, you're going to get major benefits when you're in your geriatric years. Just like saving money, and there's compound interest that takes place. Because when we age, there are certain gates that happen where there's hypermethylation that takes place and it changes our epigenetics. But if you can slow down that methylation, especially during those key gates in our lifespan, then you are radically slowing down the aging process. And the key to doing that, the key to reducing the hypermethylation, the key to slowing down the epigenetics of aging is to bring down the inflammation, soak up those free radicals, and boost up your energy levels, improve the health of your mitochondria. So please go to my store and get the great supplements I offer. All right. With that, I want to listen into probably Bloomberg.
From 2018 to 2022. He was accused of sexual assault by 2 women in 2019, but denied the allegations and finished his term. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the military is ready to resume operations against Iran if it doesn't agree to U.S. terms for a peace deal.
During a Pentagon briefing, Hegseth said the U.S. knows which military assets Iran has left and is watching Iran move them.
Our forces are maximally postured to restart combat operations should this new Iranian regime choose poorly and not agree to a deal.
Hegseth said the U.S. controls the Strait of Hormuz, not Iran. He also criticized some of the media coverage of the war.
Sometimes it's hard to figure out what side some of you are actually on. It's incredibly unpatriotic.
Michael Wallace, CBS News.
England's Archbishop of Canterbury, Sally Mullally, says she just called Pope Leo's courageous call for peace after a war of words with President Trump. As the war drags on, a stark warning from the head of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol.
In Europe, we have maybe 6 weeks or so jet fuel left.
He's warning of possible flight cancellations soon. Multiple reports warn budget-friendly Spirit Airlines may go under for good. Transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve from Bush Intercontinental in Houston.
As the price of jet fuel has nearly doubled since January, driven by the conflict in Iran, airline sources now tell CBS News some of Spirit's creditors question the airline's ability to make debt payments or return to profitability, which could lead the discount carrier to run out of financial runway.
Health Secretary Kennedy is testifying on Capitol Hill right now, defending President Trump's plan to slash his department's budget by more than 12%. Kennedy says we need to spend more on preventing chronic illness, not treating it.
Parents across the country demanded change, and we are delivering it. We are ending the era of federal policies that fueled the chronic disease epidemic and replacing them with policies that put the health of Americans first.
This is CBS News.
Takeaways on how they plan to prosecute this maritime war while those Islamabad talks are still at play.
Well, Neve, the exact words of the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, were that the United States is locked and loaded. That doesn't mean that he didn't also offer Iranian leaders an off-ramp, saying that they still have an opportunity for a prosperous future. There's still an opportunity for Iran to take the Golden Bridge, in the words of the Secretary of Defense. What we've learned from that lengthy press briefing early on Thursday here in Washington, D.C., is that Washington is moving into a new phase of this war, a phase of both military and economic containment. What Secretary Pete Hegseth has referred to in his term as Operation Economic Fury, where on the one hand, as you mentioned, there is still quite a bit of optimism from the Trump administration that diplomacy has a pulse, that these ongoing talks in Islamabad could still yield a favorable diplomatic result for Washington, while on the other hand, the United States will continue to use this U.S.-led blockade in the Strait of Hormuz as leverage. The concern moving forward here, Neve, is that leverage not accidentally or inadvertently evolve into escalation if Iran were to test the perimeters of this blockade. And it was made very clear by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, that the United States is postured and ready to resume combat operations if there were to be a violation of that ceasefire by the Iranians.
On that point, Manuel, I mean, with General Kane confirming that the blockade now extends to all ships, regardless of nationality, did you get any sense from the room during that presser of how the Pentagon actually plans to manage the inevitable friction with major powers like China, whose vessels are essentially being turned back?
Well, what the Pentagon is signaling in that regard is that this is about maritime security. This isn't about targeting any one country specifically. But with that said, the U.S. is essentially stepping into difficult or sensitive territory here, geopolitically speaking, by turning away ships that could be tied directly to major trading partners, as you mentioned, countries like China. And what we don't have, unfortunately, we didn't hear, more importantly, from this press briefing, is any details over how the U.S. might mitigate that type of diplomatic friction. And so the potential for a diplomatic confrontation of that sort, that sort of scenario does exist, that the potential for such a scenario does exist. But the short answer here, I believe, is that the Pentagon is aware that this is a risk of raising the stakes, for lack of a better term here, but they're willing to make that gamble if the payoff is that Iran would be willing to move toward a grand bargain that would allow the United States to reap that payoff, to be able to claim not only a military success, but an overall victory in this war and finally bring this conflict to an end.
That was Manuel DrPaulCottrell live in Washington, D.C. Many thanks for that. While talking about taking the temperature, let's go to Ali Hashem in the Iranian capital, Tehran. And Ali, I understand the IRGC are now explicitly labeling the U.S. port blockade as a, quote, violation of the ceasefire. Plus, we have Mohsen Rezai, a key advisor to the Supreme Leader, issuing a televised warning earlier saying, our launchers are now locked on the warships and we will sink them all. I mean, where does this leave all the diplomatic efforts being led by Pakistan?
Well, in parallel with the diplomatic effort and in parallel with the situation of distrust and, let me say, cautiousness from the Iranian side, we're hearing these stances coming from different personalities, Mr. Rezai, who's an advisor, or from the Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters commander. These are signaling power, signaling readiness for confrontation, while at the same time the diplomats, Harangue or Mr. Khalibaf, both of them during their meetings with the Pakistani commander-in-chief were also expressing readiness to talks in case there is a common ground. What the Iranians seem to be feeling right now is that this common ground isn't yet there. It doesn't exist yet, because the more the Americans are putting offers on the table, and then the Iranians are reacting to these offers, then these offers are being withdrawn. It happened now with the enrichment plan, and the Iranians were preparing their response, but it seems that the United States isn't interested anymore in a 20 years hold for Iran's enrichment. Rather, it wants Iran's nuclear program to be halted completely. So these signals from both sides are giving us such an outcome, because at the same time, from the American side, we saw the Minister of War also threatening the Iranians. We saw the military, the Navy commander also threatening the Iranians. So it's a two-way threats and two-way signals.
Says Ali Hashim in Tehran. Many thanks. Introducing Rob Guys-Pigafong, is a lecturer in international security at King's College London. He joins us from the British capital. Good to see you, Rob. So Pete Hegseth's Pentagon statement was brimming with confidence, I think it's fair to say, bristling with firepower. He kept urging the Iranians to, quote, choose wisely with the options on the table. Why does the US need to continue asserting this locked and loaded mantra if the Iranians have, according to the Pentagon, been decimated?
Well, the short answer is that both sides, both the US and Iran, are engaging in saber rattling because they're trying to demonstrate resolve. They're trying to say that actually they're the ones who've come out on top of this and that they're ready for another round. Now, the irony is that both sides probably don't want another round right now, and they're happy for the negotiations and the discussions to go ahead. But all of that bellicose rhetoric, first of all, this is classic Trump administration, particularly Pete Hegseth stuff, but also the clear desire or the intent here is to show Iran that the US is not rattled, that it's ready for another round, and that's where the naval blockade of Iranian ports comes in as well, because the US is basically trying to take Iran's, no pun intended, trump card away from it in terms of opening up the Strait of Hormuz to the rest of the international shipping, whilst at the same time closing it to Iran. So both sides are trying to get leverage, and the US currently feels like the momentum is on its side. It can basically constrain Iran and squeeze it financially and economically, whilst opening up the Strait of Hormuz, which would hopefully, from the US's perspective, lead to a recovery in global energy markets and the global economy, which will allow the US to continue if and when it feels the need to do so.
Rob, we're led to believe that momentum is growing for another round of negotiations in Islamabad. I mean, at the same time, though, just going what we were saying about this ratcheting up of tension and saber rattling, is that the reason why the United States doesn't appear to be drawn on any extension to the ceasefire, which would be pretty critical if they want any diplomatic breakthrough to happen?
Well, again, this is classic Trump administration negotiation, right? Trump tries to play a game of chicken with all of his opponents. We saw, of course, very, very recently, Trump claiming that Iranian civilization was going to die tonight, to quote his exact words from True Social, before he actually agreed to a ceasefire. So I think you have to take Trump's and the US's the US administration claims with a pinch of salt, simply because they have shown a willingness to say one thing and then actually do another. So I think at the moment the best case scenario would be an extension of the ceasefire, unless something very secret and very surprising is being cooked up right now. We are unlikely to see some kind of a game-changing deal before that deadline expires. So the best case scenario right now, or the most likely scenario, if you're an optimist, is an extension of that ceasefire and basically giving time for talks to take place to see if we can actually get to a breakthrough, rather than what the pessimists fear, a return to conflict where this becomes more or less the dominant and recurring paradigm. This is just another break in between wars with Iran.
Something that wasn't mentioned in the Pentagon is what other world powers looking in are thinking about all of this. General Kane focused on, quote, owning the skies. But how does Iran's reported use of Chinese reconnaissance satellites to track, for instance, the USS Abraham Lincoln, how does it undermine the Pentagon's claim of total domain dominance?
Right, there's the use of Chinese satellites. There's also the use of Russian intelligence, which has been alleged when it comes to Iran's targeting of the GCC states to work out where US military personnel might be located. So this is a conflict with very, very global implications. But what I should stress here is basically to warn against this perception that there's some sort of new axis of evil that's Russia, China, and Iran. In short, Iran wishes it was on the same level as those states, and it wishes it had as much leverage with them as they do with it. Yes, Russia and China have been dipping in terms of assisting Iran, giving it some sort of advantage, or at least mitigating its disadvantages, but they have not been willing to throw themselves into this conflict. Remember that countries like China have extremely complicated relations in the Middle East. They're very, very close to the Gulf states economically, as they are close to Iran as well. So I think there's little desire or threat so far of this turning into World War III, as some doommongers have warned or in the past. Basically, this is a conflict between the US and Israel. It is and Iran. It is drawn in other countries like the Gulf states, but so far this does not have any sort of significant geopolitical reverberations that would see us on the path to, for example, World War III or anything scary like that.
All right, Rob, I'm happy to take you on that last point. I'm sure our viewers will be as well, enjoying your optimism, at least when it comes to the prospects of a worldwide conflagration. Rob Geis-Pinfold, lecturer in international security at King's College London. Many thanks. Delegates from Pakistan have been touring Iran and the Gulf region. Pakistani Army Chief General Hassan Munir.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This will help to whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, improve your gum line, reduce inflammation, and it's super important for your oral hygiene. Good oral hygiene can help with your cardiovascular health. This has no fluoride in it. This is the best toothpaste that you can get. Get a few tubes for your household. Use it every day. And again, it has structural nanosilver, so it's going to help to neutralize. That's really important during the cold season. Structural nanosilver gels. You can get it in the tube form or the quick dispenser form. Have some at work, have some at home. It's dual purpose. It'll help to heal the wound quicker, like a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. You can use it as daily skincare to improve your skin, and it will help to neutralize. Let's say someone around you is not feeling well, or you're not feeling well because of the cold season. Put it on your hands. It stays active for 5.5 hours. You can also put it around your mouth, your eyes, around your ears, around your nose, and lightly coat your nostrils. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the structural nanosilver gel. And if you have arthritis or muscle pains or tension headaches or a sprain, get the super strong relief from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Super strong relief, you apply topically, and within about 90 seconds, the pain is reduced or eliminated. And it works very well with arthritis and tension headaches. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the super strong relief. And you can stack that with the collagen. Collagen you take every day, and this will help to remodel your joints if you have arthritis, like osteoarthritis, or let's say you have a sports injury. This will help to remodel the joint. This will help to use collagen type 2 and glucosamine to help to remodel the cartilage, and ACAN and chondroitin to help to cushion the joint. Now, collagen will also inhibit MMP3 and MMP13, which are enzymes that will erode joints over time. By blocking them, you're allowing your joints to heal and stop the erosion process. Now, Ep5 can also be blocked, and that will reduce the inflammation. So collagen is a great way to get your joints remodeling and healthier if you've had a sports injury or have arthritis. The earlier that you start taking the collagen, once you have the issue, the faster it'll take you to get back to baseline. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Now there's a little trick that a lot of people don't know. That you take the joint that's bothering you. Let's say it's your wrist, all right? And let's say you have some arthritis in your wrist, and it hurts when you do a flex or an extension, all right? And so let's say it hurts to this level here. You go a little bit more and hold it for about 20 seconds and then release. And then do it again, 20 seconds and release, and do that a few times a day. And over time, you're going to be able to get to the point where you're going to be able to fully flex or fully extend that joint without pain. All right? And you can apply that with your shoulder or your elbow or your knee or whatever. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the collagen. This also stacks really well with the collagen that has the amino acids to help build up the joints. So use discount 5, take my advice, get the collagen, do that exercise that I just mentioned, and you're going to be able, over time, to remodel the joint. The earlier, the better, because you don't want to wait too long where those enzymes are degrading the actual cartilage. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
So you saw Admiral Cooper come on and dress for the first time. I always thought he was in theater. He says he's just his second visit over to the Middle East. Then we saw, of course, General Kane and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth address an update, which is we are just right in the middle of a ceasefire right now. But we're just on and up, ready to go. Should we have to jump in again?
Yeah, he said what we've been saying all morning. You can do it the nice way, or you can take the hard way. And he urged the new regime to choose wisely, he said, which is to hand over the enriched uranium so you cannot make a nuclear bomb, open up the strait, and because we've annihilated their economy, we've annihilated their ships, their missiles, their air force, and taken out their leadership. So you would think that they would be willing, their economy, 80% inflation rate right now, is 40% in January when everyone was protesting.
Speaking of the Strait, Ainsley, we learned from that press conference that they haven't had to do any of the interdiction. It looks like all of those countries are understanding what the United States means, which was they will seize the ships, they will board those ships, and they will use any type of military operation if they need to.
They will take them up to 13 ships. They made the wise move to turn around.
But they do have rockets left, no doubt about it, and the Gulf states know that well. Let's bring in Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin to break it down. Jennifer, we're in the pause, but it looks like the military has not stopped.
Well, that's right. In fact, what we just heard, Brian, is that they are in the process of rearming, and that ceasefire ends on Tuesday, April 21st, unless it is unless the 2-week ceasefire is extended. I think the most interesting thing that we learned from the press conference is that they are taking this blockade, and we learned from General Kane that they had turned back 13 vessels, ships that were heading to Iranian ports or were Iranian vessels of some sort. Those 13 ships had turned back because of the blockade. They have not had to board any of the vessels, but we also learned that they are extending this blockade really in terms of going after any Iranian ships out to the Pacific. And so Admiral Paparo out at Indo-PACOM will be chasing down some of that shadow fleet, those oil tankers that are not flagged but are in fact trying to help Iran skirt sanctions. And they're going to be going after those ships aggressively in the Pacific. That is something new that we have not heard before. You mentioned Admiral Cooper and his second trip to the region. He has been down at CENTCOM headquarters in Tampa, sort of quarterbacking this whole effort for the last month or 6 weeks or so. And so it would not be normal for the CENTCOM commander to be over in the Middle East. Tampa is set up to be the kind of headquarters to bring all of the efforts, air, sea, and army together. I think what is interesting, it's the first time that Admiral Cooper has been up to the Pentagon since the war started. Not a lot of details about what comes next, but I think the secretary spent most of the time addressing the Iranian leadership. It's clear that intensive negotiations are going on right now, or talks about talks. The concern, I think, here in Washington is that the Iranians will just try to play for time. And I think the message today is that the U.S. military is rearming and will be ready if the ceasefire falls apart. Brian?
Jennifer, can you put into perspective, though, as it relates to those ships that they turned around and they're waiting for them, how much of an impact Iran not getting those ships, the financial impact that it's going to have on the Iranian regime?
Well, it's a good question, Lawrence. I think from what we've been talking to experts, it's going to have a very significant effect. In fact, the Iranian economy is really on the verge of collapse. And if you take away the shipping, the oil tankers, there were 9 oil tankers, I think, that were turned back. Those oil tankers are normally leaving the Karg Island and that area on a daily basis, and that's how they make their money. We spoke to one expert who said that if this goes on 2 weeks longer, that the oil capacity, if they can't get the oil out of those ports, we saw this in Venezuela, if they can't get it out of those ports, they'll have to turn off their kind of oil pipeline, and that backs up the whole system. And then really you're going to see the economic collapse come rather quickly. So I think the next 2 weeks are rather crucial for the Iranian economy as well as their oil supply.
Definitely. Jennifer, thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest.
My observation is
full shows streaming next.
My observation with the markets right now, you have equities now starting to drift down again. It's at 7,013 with VIX slowly creeping up. It's still at the 19 handle. And oil is 93.51. Natural gas is trading at 2.648. So this is in line with what Hegseth said this. So there is a little bit of a pullback here because of this. Let's listen into CNBC. They're talking about this pullback that I'm watching here.
And with the market's pricing in for oil by the end of the year. And what you've been seeing is the market seems fairly comfortable that, again, as we wind through the second half of the year, you see a trajectory in crude on the West Texas down to the mid-70s, let's say. That's not a bad place. It's certainly not as constructive as it was prior to Iran, where we were in a much more classic Goldilocks economic circumstance, but it does begin to take some edge off of the potential impact of higher for longer oil prices. So we're really watching the futures curve on this right now as our bearing and how this is going to play out.
If you have money on hand, all right, you may want to, in terms of trading oil, you may want to wait until you see the United States hits Iran again. Oil is going to spike short. All right. So that means that once we start hitting, which is probably a high probability here, once we start hitting Iran again, or do some ground offensive or special forces thing, or who knows what Trump's going to be doing, oil's going to spike. We might break 94 today, and it's going to potentially retest 104 for WTI. But when that does happen, normally these things happen at night, and so the U.S. markets are closed, so you're not going to get the full appreciation of what I'm saying here. But take advantage of that higher oil price and short it. And you could short it many different ways. You could go into the futures market, which is a little crazy, or you can do it with an ETF. But if you have cash on hand and you want to play the energy market, you may want to wait until we hit. Then short oil. But you have to be patient because it might not happen. And then that's okay. But I suspect that oil is going to spike once we start hitting Iran again. I think Trump is setting himself up for another hit on Iran. All right, let's see what CNN has to say about Trump. MTG, CNN.
They put the plate down like it's a piece of art. They make me feel that way.
These days, everything we do seems to require more and more electricity. Certain products are switching to electric, like cars, while others, like AI, are requiring.
There's obviously no secret, and I said that you wore a hat at one point saying Trump was right on everything, and you know that he's never been a beacon of moral principle. His evangelical Christian supporters admitted that. They called him an unlikely vessel.
All right. So Omnipore, I call her Mick Jagger because she looks like Mick Jagger. From CNN is going to be interviewing MTG. Of course, liberal. You just look at the glasses. She looks like a liberal. But before we start the Never Trumpers out there on CNN, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the clarity factor. This will get rid of that brain fog and allow you to have positive neuroplasticity that will improve your neural connections. Your memory will improve. You'll be able to concentrate better. Your cognition will be faster. This is a very powerful neurostat. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. Super important. It'll allow you to concentrate and it gets rid of that brain fog. Myotrol will help to build up muscle, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. You can't build muscle as easily compared to when you were younger. Why? Because of methylation of your genes as you get older. You can reverse it. All right? You can help to improve your musculature by doing resistance training. You don't have to do a lot of it, but just do some resistance training each week. Take Myotrol. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and to maintain muscle. It also helps with the health of your mitochondria, so you have the energy to maintain the muscle. This is super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female, to prevent atrophy and to build more muscle. Now, why is this important? By building muscle, for example, in your calves and in your legs, you're going to have better venous return flow to your heart. By building muscle, you're going to have better posture and you'll have denser bones. And with better back muscles, you're going to improve your lymphatic flow and your venous return flow to your heart by just improving your back muscles and improving your posture. Super important. But by building up muscles, you're producing more myokines that will help to protect your neurons. Higher levels of myokines will actually protect neurons. And you will have a higher concentration of what is called BDNF. All right? So that also helps with protecting your neurons and helping with your neural networks. So that's super important for brain function. So better musculature equates to better brain function. Poorer musculature and having atrophy will lead to poor outcomes for cognition, cognitive function. So please take my advice, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol and do some resistance training. And vitamin B complex will boost up the health of your mitochondria. You're gonna have more ATP, you're gonna have more energy, your cell metabolism will be better, so your tissues will perform better, and vitamin B12 will help to protect neurons. And lastly, olive leaf extract, dual purpose, helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system, brings down inflammation, and helps you to control your lipid profile. And when you control your lipid profile and you reduce inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. That's super important. Cardiovascular disease is rampant in the United States because of poor lifestyle choices, but you can reverse it. You can prevent it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. All right, let's go to CNN, the liberals.
Yet chosen by God for a higher purpose, i.e., that it was somewhat transactional. We'll support him and he will help us get our Christian principles enacted into law. And you know what happened with Roe versus Wade and the other. I guess what I'm trying to say is, based on what you knew about Trump then, are you surprised that he violates Christian principles or even...
Let's look at that. Look at that, those glasses. Only a liberal would wear those glasses. You see it all the time in New York. You get this almost like this New York look. You know what I'm talking about? That liberal New York look. Of course, there's the conservative New York look, but you get this like liberal look. Now, do you think that's God, country, and family? I don't think so. But let's continue.
Saying in terms of MAGA principles, America First principles now, should you have known better?
It's very hard to explain in just a short matter of minutes. So I only knew President Trump while he was out of office. I didn't know him during my first term, as I wasn't a member of Congress then, and I became a member of Congress in January of 2021. So I campaigned for the president, and that was my relationship with him. It was after he came into office in 2025 where I started to see him differently, where he began to change and began to support issues that he was against just before that, before he became president. So that's been my personal experience. Is he going back on what many Christians want to see happen? I would say so. And again, I can just only speak for myself.
You essentially have broken with Trump.
Well, here's the thing. America First, there's two types of America First. There's the Pompeo America First, which is America First expansionism. And then there's the America First pacifists, like MTG. Now, the far majority of the America First is falling in line of the pacifists. They're the Lindenbergs of today, all right? Now, let's put that aside. Now, we have this issue with this whole, Christian right movement that's taking place in the United States. All right? It's good that we're having more religion in our society. We need God, country, and family. All right? But people need to pay attention. Over-proselytizing is the reason why people moved away from religion, not towards religion. Secondly, we have freedom of religion and from religion. Another important point. And philosophers have debated this, especially recent philosophers like Nietzsche, that wrote in the 20th century, but his work continues on today, all right? The idea of the slave morality. And the slave morality is having too much empathy that it gets to the point where another group of people come in and actually enslave you. technologically or politically, economically. And the problem is that if you look at the ultra-right, America First, pacifists, they are almost prototypical of what Nietzsche was saying with the slave morality. Sometimes you have to kill your enemy. This idea of being, apologetic, and you have to, fall in line and just wait, give peace a chance. A lot of times that doesn't work. And maybe what Nietzsche was saying about the slave morality was right. If you have a society that has this suicidal empathy, which is not the term he used, that's a modern term by Gadd, I believe, Professor Gadd. But this suicidal empathy, if you have too much empathy, you're not willing to fight, you have a society that starts to become soft. And when you have a society that's soft, don't be surprised that you get conquered. Now, look at what is happening with Europe. There's a caliphate that's taking place in Europe because of their immigration policies. Are Germans German anymore? Not so much. Are British British anymore? Not so much. Are French French anymore? Not so much. Why? Because of the caliphate. And you're starting to see some of these types of things happening in the United States. Now, you fast forward, or you take a look at what's happened in New York and in London. Do you think the society is better or worse off? It's worse off. Now, why is that? Well, wait a minute. Maybe it has something to do with the mayors. Maybe it has something to do with the over-liberal policy. Now, where does liberal policy come in? Well, you have to just give. You have to have all this empathy for all these different people, and you just have to keep on giving and just keep on taxing and then it's an erosion of the Enlightenment, the erosion of what John Locke wrote and codified: life, liberty, and property. So through the slave morality and this ultra religion coming from the Christians, if they have too much empathy and not willing to fight when you need to, you get taken over. And not only that, you build in, through the politics, a nanny state. America will not be stronger with America First pacifism, nor will it be a strong country under slave morality.
He has, I suppose, broken with you. He does a play on words with your name, Marjorie, Traitor Green, etc. Can you explain to me what is going on, do you think? Not necessarily, first I want to ask you why you think Trump is behaving this way, what he said about civilizational erasure in Iran, what he said about, this Jesus depiction. What do you think is going on?
He's trolling. That's what's
going on. Thank you for bringing that up.
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari, and I'm the CEO of Ph.D.
Thank you for bringing that up. And just to be clear, President Trump called me a traitor because I fought to release the Epstein files, defending women who were raped at 14 and 16 years old. And I would not obey his demands of taking my name off that discharge petition. That's why he calls me a traitor. I'm not a traitor to the United States. I stand with women and stand with victims. I don't know what's going on, but I think that is the conversation that needs to be had as a matter.
You can stand for women and stand for victims and still be a traitor to the United States. They're not mutually exclusive. Standing for victims has nothing to do with the country. MTG is a dipshit.
fact, I think it's an extremely important conversation. Why the President of the United States wants to portray himself as God, and why he would dare even use the words wipe out an entire civilization. I think many people, not only in our country, but all across the world, are so deeply concerned.
Well, let me get this straight. Destroy a civilization. You can destroy a civilization by just knocking out their electrical grid. Because modern society is predicated on electricity. If they don't have it, they're not in a modern society, and their civilization is destroyed, based on definition. If you reduce their ability to move around, that's also part of modern society. It wasn't that long ago. It was really the 1950s, where in the United States, where people could actually travel vast distances across the continental United States because of the interstate highway. Now, why was the interstate highway put in? It was put in to actually move tanks around, not to move your car around. There was dual purpose. There was a civilian use, but the main reason was to move, because of the Cold War, the military around. So, not being able to move around in a society by blowing up the bridges and destroying their electrical capability, of course you're going to be destroying their civilization and snapping them back to the 1600s. But not just that. If you look at the history of Shia religion, right, which was a spin-off of Islam, so there's this, the Shias and the Sunnis hate each other because both sides say that they have some sort of connection to Muhammad. But the thing is that by destroying their theocratic regime, by destroying the clergy of Shia, that's civilization destruction too. It's destroying the civilization of the theocratic regime based on Shia religion. But why do we automatically assume it has something to do with nuclear? Why do we assume that it was just going to be totally bombing the whole country, and that including the seculars? Trump talks with hyperbole, and there's nothing wrong with it. He's a New Yorker. But taking down your electrical grid, and it takes decades to rebuild, that's snapping a society back into the 1600s. And that is civilization destruction. You think our modern civilization would be around if we didn't have electricity? Of course not. You don't have electricity for 10 days, it's a big problem. You don't have it for months, it's an even bigger problem. And all of a sudden, food distribution starts to go down, health starts to go down. Now try that for 2 years or 3 years. And you'll have decline in the population, people will start dying off. That is civilization destruction. So I don't see anything wrong with what Trump said.
That language, that it is the right thing to do to be talking about it.
So we didn't mention, but you also retired or resigned from Congress, and you're not an active congresswoman right now. I've read, in doing a lot of reading for this interview, a lot of people are trying to figure out, apart from what you say now and what you said, what is at the heart of your gripe is the wrong way, but your disagreement with President Trump right now. And one analyst or political analyst said, you seem to have recognized that the president has broken faith with his own followers. Do you think that you are seeing something bigger than just what we're talking about right now? Because you have been such a prominent member of the MAGA, the first, America First movement. Is there something bigger going on than just these these quotes and these things that he puts out in public?
I don't know why they hijacked the term America First, because in Pompeo's memoirs, he talks about America First, and it's about expansionism. It's not just protecting the homeland and being, it's also expansionism. economically, militarily. So it's been hijacked this term. It's been hijacked by a bunch of white, a bunch of right-wing wingnuts that think that the Republican Party is her, which is the same problem that they had with the Tea Party. And this is the reason why, because of this horse shit, this is part of the reason why we're going to actually have Democrats in the House, maybe even in the Senate, after the midterm elections. Thank you, MTG, for handing the baton to the ultra-liberal. See, the ultra-right is as bad as the ultra-liberal. You get the same result.
Believe in accountability, and that's why I'm so outspoken. Many people, especially in other countries, may not know my time in Congress, I spent calling out Republicans just as frequently as I did Democrats. I believe it's incredibly important to follow through on the promises that elected
So the
leaders
reality
make.
of the situation is the Tea Party movement that morphed into the MAGA movement is really not Republican. It's really independent, but they have found an attachment to the Republican Party. And there's the key difference there. And what I just said has some deep wisdom.
That elect them. After all, that's who they work for, not special interest or anyone else. But as far as President Trump is concerned, I'm not sure exactly what is going on with him, but I've been calling for people in his cabinet, the administration, and Republicans to engage in these conversations, because this is extremely concerning. This is the President of the United States who is waging an extremely concerning war in Iran that seems to be escalating. The United States is also our ally.
Has she paid attention to the history of the region? Has she paid attention to the idea that we need to control the oil to be able to circumvent the hegemonic rise of China? Is she paying attention to the strife that is happening between Shia and Sunni? Is she paying attention to that Iraq, after World War I, the whole Ottoman Empire after World War I was broken apart, all right? And you had these zones, the blue zone, the red zone, right? And these zones have an amalgamation of different religions and different cultures, and they're not cohesive. And so there's a lot of infighting. And this goes all the way back to World War I. Now, can we really have a theocratic regime run by a Shia cleric with a nuclear weapon? Can we? Is the world safer with that? This is stupid. This is exactly what Nietzsche was talking about with this idea of the slave morality. Now she doesn't want. I mean, do you think that if she's wearing her cross, do you think that she would be for the Crusades? Now the reality of the situation is the Christians lost during the Crusades, but the bottom line is, would she? You teleport her back to the Crusades, would she be there? Or would she say, we need to have a France first policy? No intervention in the Middle East. Don't take Jerusalem. Nietzsche's right. I mean, literally, Nietzsche was probably imagining a person like MTG when he wrote about slave morality.
We are also funding them with weapons as they declare war and wage war on Lebanon and have killed many innocent people in Gaza. So I myself, as an American, not just a former member of Congress, think it's important to speak out on this and call for accountability. Accountability not for only the current direction that the president...
What about accountability of the Shia religion through Iran funding Hezbollah and Hamas? What about the people within Gaza overthrowing Hamas? They didn't want to overthrow Hamas, or they were fearful of it. It was a combination of the population supporting Hamas, not supporting Hamas, and scared of Hamas and all this stuff. But why didn't the society galvanize to overthrow Hamas? They didn't, because they saw that by aligning with Hamas, maybe they would be able to chip away at Israel. And then all of a sudden they lost. All the experts like Scott Ritter and all these, geopolitical analysts, think that Israel's going to fall. The reality is it hasn't. Now, could it? Yeah, it could. Does Israel deserve to have a country? If it can fight for it and protect the land, yes. It's that simple. Does America deserve the continental United States? Does America deserve Hawaii and Alaska? As long as it can defend it, yes. Does the Gazans deserve their country? If they can't defend it, no. If they can defend it, yes. Now, it doesn't look like they're being able to defend it. And that is the sad reality of the world, and about countries, and about borders, and about civilizations. So, of course there's going to be collateral damage. All wars have collateral damage. But if you keep on kicking the can down the road, the costs will go up and the collateral damage will increase. Slave morality right here. Because she has some sort of special connection with God.
Going in, but also accountability to the promises he made the American people in 2024.
Which were no foreign wars, America first, that's the kind of thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, no more.
Yeah. So you want a president that is frozen based on promises within a campaign. What happens when something happens in the geopolitical scene where you have to act? What do you do then? And then she'll say, well, it wasn't an imminent threat for Iran. It's too late. It's too late. You don't need to have a very accurate missile, ICBM. It just has to be good enough to travel near your target, especially if it has a nuclear warhead. So they already have shown that they have missile technology that is 4,000 kilometers from its launch site. They can shoot 4,000 kilometers. Is it accurate? No. But it doesn't have to be that accurate. Now, if you have 60% enrichment of uranium, why do you have that? It's sure as hell not for civilian use. So she's saying that it's okay for them to be a skip, hop, and a jump to a nuclear weapon? Is that what she's saying? Should Washington, D.C. glow in the dark now? What about L.A.? What about San Francisco? What about New York? What about Boston? What about Detroit? What happens when a nuclear warhead hits because of America First policies? I want a president that takes in information and can change his opinion, change his direction based on that new information. It's idiotic to say, well, we're never going to have a war. Well, no, you don't know what the situation is. What happens if Taiwan is taken over by China and we no longer have freedom of navigation through the 9-dash line? Based on her slave morality. She wants to give up the hegemonic power that we have in the Pacific. This is the stupidity of the America First pacifist.
America First.
And also, I think on the Epstein files, didn't the president say, or during the campaign, that they were going to release all the evidence, all the files?
Yes, and that was talked about for years, not only by the president, but it was basically a blanket campaign promise for Republicans overall.
Literally, think about this.
Should...
Talking about suicidal empathy and slave morality. They are more focused on the victims of the Epstein files than literally the nuclear capability of the Shia religion. Think about that for a second. Your life doesn't mean anything with the Epstein files. Nothing. Your life will not change if it's released, not released, having hearings or whatever. Your life will not change. It will not change. Your financial situation won't change. Your health won't change. Nothing in your life will change. But having a nuclear weapon in Iran will change your life. Because you're talking about massive armaments that will have to take place in the United States, more war, more destruction that will cause more havoc and affect the financial system. Iran having a nuclear weapon will directly affect your life. The Epstein files, not so much. So literally, she wants to deep six our hegemonic power in the world for the Epstein files. Now, should the Epstein files be released? Yeah, just release it. Why it's taken so long, I don't know. And honestly, I don't care. What I care about is where oil's going. What I care about is people's health. What I care about is making sure that it's America First expansionism and that we maintain our hegemonic power. And there is nothing wrong, and Americans should not be apologetic of the gains that we've had since World War II.
Been a fight that I had to have with President Trump. It should have been the easiest thing in the world, but instead it was the biggest fight that led to him calling me a traitor and ultimately led to me resigning, refusing to serve under a president
she was a traitor to him. I mean, did he say something that wasn't true? I mean, it looks like she was a traitor to him. I don't know. But the thing is that this is the problem. The MAGA movement is a spin-off of the Tea Party movement. And the Tea Party movement wasn't so aligned with the Republican Party. Now, part of the reason is the Republican Party wasn't really listening to the average person that wanted to be a Republican. Right? So, these people, they didn't fit with the Democratic Party because of socialism of the Democratic Party. So the Tea Party and the MAGA and all that, they're really an independent party. But they know they can't get into office unless they align with someone. And the closest to that is the Republican Party. But MAGA is not really Republican. They're independent.
publicly pledged to destroy me. I thought that was incredibly unfair to my district. These are the things that have many of us concerned and has caused a giant divide among the base of people that supported President Trump.
But, in terms of the opposition to the Iran war, you're not alone amongst MAGA. Very prominent influencers and media figures such as Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones and Candace Owens, all quite controversial, as you know, have also been accused of supporting anti-Semitic tropes or platforming anti-Semitic views. So is that an issue? Are you comfortable with the company that you keep, the anti-foreign?
And this is the reason why the great curse is coming. There's so much infighting within Israel between the observant and the non-observant, between the liberal Jew and the non-liberal Jew, between Republicans and Democrats in the United States, ultra liberals and ultra conservatives, the infighting between Protestant and Catholic and Shia and Sunni, all the infighting that is taking place. Everyone in the world is going to be cursed because of it. So let's just, and it's going to start on September 11th, 2026. Unless we do the right thing. Look in the mirror and say, there are certain things that need to happen to allow for a better world. And having a theocratic regime in Iran is not one of them. And the ultra liberal will say, or the ultra conservative like MTG will say, well, you can't kill the Ayatollah. That's wrong. Well, there's the slave morality. There's the suicidal empathy. Right there, in full bloom. All right. And so, because they have that stance, they are going against the grain of what has been written down for thousands of years, that Esau, negative Esau, the soul root of Esau, the soul root that feeds certain groups, certain countries, has to die. This is not a modern concept. This is something that's been written down for thousands, plural, thousands of years, way before America First pacifism. Now, which one do you think is more of a higher probability? What is written down in biblical texts for thousands of years on what's going to happen to Esau? Or the belief system of MTG?
Intervention wing of the MAGA movement, also being against Israel. And I mean, what do we have just recently? So we had Nick Fuentes, who had been, talked to by Tucker Carlson, saying, my problem is that, Trump isn't Hitler enough. I'm sure he was, trying to make a different point, but.
Yeah, I don't answer for other people. What I can tell you, in my opinion, is it's not.
Candace Owens, right wing nut. Alex Jones, bombastic, and his zenith has passed. All right, and Tucker's a strange guy. Tucker, he's Duck Dynasty now. He's a hunter. He's a fly fisherman. He lives in a cabin, a cottage, well decorated. But he's a Duck Dynasty now, even though he was a blue blood when they rolled him onto CNN being a commentator for the Republican Party. And it's these people that are making a ton of money because of so many people watching them, that they have monetized their audience in such a way where they're actually willing to sell the country down the river for their own gain, so the Republican Party loses in the House. Now, when that happens, do you really think that Trump's ability to get things done in the country will diminish? Of course. I wouldn't be surprised he gets impeached multiple times because the ultra-liberal is crazy. But they let it happen. They let it happen. If the Republican Party fails in the midterm, it's going to be the fault of Candace Owens, Alex Jones, MTG, Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson. And that's in November. And that's the second month or it's actually the third month, depending on how you count it. You're going into the third month of when the curse starts. The curse starts September 11, 2026. Midterms are November 2026. And then there was going to be an emergent property that takes hold around the world, and a curse will ensue if we don't get the job done in the Middle East. Just imagine if we don't get the job done in the Middle East. See what happens, what potentially could happen with food, with agriculture, with oil, with energy, with potentially the movement of China into Taiwan. Ukraine isn't stable. Russia may gain more land out of Ukraine, especially with NATO being not so effective. Things could radically change. We have a high debt in the United States, and we have AI coming in, eroding jobs. Maybe we have a recession that's not cyclical, but structural. Then you're going to have more people defaulting on their homes. Maybe we'll have another type of Lehman situation. All these things are possible. We have it good because we've been blessed. But that doesn't mean that we deserve the blessing in perpetuity. We may lose the blessing. And this is what I mean by the curse. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? We're all being judged. We're all being judged. No one's going to be able to hide from this.
Anti-Semitic to be against the secular government of Israel and their wars. That's not anti-Semitism. That's being anti-war. I've got a strong history of being anti-war, not just the war in Iran or against Israel's basically genocide in Gaza and what they're doing in Lebanon now.
Rome couldn't be in existence without war. The United States can't be in existence without war. What's this idea of anti-war? It's such a, I don't know, John Lennon bullshit idea, anti-war. What happens when your enemy needs to be destroyed? Then you're anti-war. Nietzsche was right. This is the problem with Christianity. This is the problem with the ultra wing of Christianity. Slave morality. That just what she just said is exactly the problem. What happens when your enemy is at the door and you're anti-war? You will fall. That's what's going to happen. Anti-war. What's this anti-war shit? It doesn't mean you're pro-war. You don't have to be pro-war. But the thing is that anti-war is slave morality. And that's the reason why the Christians lost the Crusades.
I was also against U.S. funding of Ukraine, and my voting record shows that. So I think what you're talking about when you bring up Tucker and Candace and Alex Jones and others, we're speaking out just like many Americans are, that we're tired of the United States and our tax dollars having to fund these wars, and we're tired of seeing our military serve in these wars in foreign countries because many of them are our friends and our family members, and they come home forever changed with PTSD or in a flag draped coffin. And we're against that. That's not anti-Semitic or hateful towards any people group. That's literally saying that we're tired of America fighting different countries' wars on their behalf.
You could be anti-war or against the war effort in the United States and it not being anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist. So I agree with her on the statement that she's making. I'm just stating that we have freedoms because of our hegemonic power. If we start having this idea that we shouldn't be protecting that hegemonic power, we're not going to have the freedoms that we have. We're not going to have the prosperity we have. We will not be a prosperous nation. So if you want to give up the prosperity for what she is suggesting, then okay, all right. But most people aren't willing to give up that prosperity.
Iran. Tell me something then finally. Do you regret supporting Trump for president? And where do you think the movement and the country is headed? And will you position yourself to try to take, at least the Republican side back to what you believe to be the America First principles?
I don't regret what I campaigned on because nothing about me has changed. And in 2024, when I helped President Trump get elected, he was pretty clear on what we were campaigning on. What I don't support is the man that he's turning into be, a man that is hell-bent on war and destruction, has forgotten about the American people that are struggling so much economically, and has basically gotten incredibly focused on...
If he's so hell-bent on war and destruction, why didn't he blow up the energy facilities in Iran and the bridges, which I'm surprised he didn't do? It doesn't seem like he's hell-bent on war. He's been trying to have peace agreements with other warring nations. In his first year in Trump 2.0 administration. So what is this idea that he's just a warmonger? He's not a warmonger. If anything, I think he's a little bit too walking on eggshells with this. He needs to stop being so fearful and just move forward and get it done. But it's not just Trump. Look at all the presidents that failed to solve the problem. And it only is getting worse. This is the problem in the United States. There's this fissure that has happened. Pacifism will weaken the country.
Owners and their top issues. That's what I'm against. Going forward, I'm looking past Donald Trump. I'm looking towards a future that is focused on my children's generation. They're all in their 20s. And I think that's the generation that we should be fighting for, and that's the generation that's
really?
largely failed.
Well, a lot of psychologists, really, MTG, lovely. A lot of psychologists have proven this kind of observation, right? Every other generation ends up being similar to themselves. Okay, what do I mean by that? The baby boomers were not the greatest generation. The greatest generation gave birth to the baby boomers, all right? But the greatest generation worked hard and won a war, all right? The baby boomers were self-centered. There was this, the 1960s was peace and love and all this bullshit. Not willing to fight for your country. Eroded God, country, and family. Ended up aligning themselves with this postmodern philosophy of relativism. They give birth to Gen X. And what did Gen X have to do? Gen X is, because it's the other generation, Gen X is more similar to the greatest generation. What did Gen X have to do? Had to fight in Gulf War I. Had to fight in Afghanistan. Had to fight in Iraq. Right? So the X generation has done a lot for this country, where a lot of people aren't paying attention to. She's Gen X. And she wants to protect her children. But what's those children going to be? They're going to be like the baby boomers. The millennials are like the baby boomers. Self-centered, not willing to fight for their country. They don't have God and country, you know, they don't have God, country, and family in their ethos. A lot of them don't even know what the Enlightenment is. Some of them a lot of them have aligned themselves with socialism or communism, which is totally antithetical to the Enlightenment. So the people that she's trying to protect, the future generation, her kids, are literally have the same psychology as the baby boomers. And you really think that the baby boomers created such a better world for the country? The baby boomers were in control of the White House, in control of the legislative body that led to this huge ramp up of debt. Donald Trump is going to be the last baby boomer, most likely, ever to be in the White House. Now the question is, who's going to be the next? Will it be a Gen Xer? Will it be a millennial? Who knows? Probably a Gen Xer, and then it'll, you know, for a short amount of time, and then it'll go into millennials for a while. That's probably what's going to happen. I think J.D. Vance is in his 30s, so I don't think that he is a Gen Xer, technically. I think Gen Y. Rubio's Gen X. So it's right at the edge there. But the point that I'm making is Gen X hasn't had proper representation in government to be able to move the needle to make it more like the greatest generation. And so the baby boomers have been in control for so long and led the country down a road that is not sustainable. But she wants to protect her children, yet the children's psychology is going to be like the baby boomers. Do they deserve? Did the baby boomers deserve the freedoms that they were handed to by the greatest generation? No. Does the future generation, does this millennial generation deserve the freedoms that we have? No. So something has to change in the society where we have God, country, and family, not just turn the cheek and having, you know, suicidal empathy. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Then you have the Pope telling us how things are in the United States. Lovely. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics. You can get the veggie cap version or the powdered version. And by having a good probiotic, it's going to help to improve your immune system at the gut, bring down inflammation, allow you to absorb your nutrients. Your metabolism will improve. Your brain function will improve. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll be able to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep. You'll be able to consolidate memory. You'll be well rested. Your skin will improve. Good gut health improves your body. It's super important. So please go to my store and get the probiotics, either the veggie cap version or the powdered version. I prefer taking the powdered version. Resveratrol. Resveratrol will help with youthful gene expression. This will also help to get rid of cells that get rid of cells that are in senescence. So it'll allow you to go into apoptosis with these cells. And when you shed these cells out of your tissues, the tissues that can regenerate will actually be healthier with longer telomeres. So your tissues will perform better and they'll be more youthful. In addition, by improving the mitochondria, you're going to be able to have more energy. Resveratrol also helps the basal layer of your skin, so you'll look younger. All right, so bottom line is taking resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression. And Cleanse and Max 35 will help to boost up your innate immune system. Take a teaspoon a day every day. Swish in your mouth, gargle, it'll neutralize, it'll help the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain a mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. Super important. I've been taking Max 35, Cleanse, or even Max 14 for 6 years. So I use this protocol, take a teaspoon a day every day. All right, it's that simple. If you're not feeling well because of a cold, take a tablespoon or two a day and then go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon after everything's all clear. But this is a great way to improve your oral cavity, improve your oral pharynx, and boost up your innate immune system. So that's the end of my broadcast. America first pacifism doesn't work. It's going to weaken the country. And because of all the infighting that's happening within the Republican Party, the Democratic Party has probably an 80% chance of winning the House. And things are going to change, and not for the better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.